what do you have, like 15 million followers now on social?
Across platform, I think I'm closer to 20, but yeah.
Man, my man. The audience probably knows you from the GlamBOT. You basically have met probably more celebrities than anyone on earth. Tell me about the big breaks in your early career that kind of like set everything else up.
I directed a video for like a huge artist. We had a bunch of other cool guests in these videos. I was like, oh, this is my big break. Lo and behold, nothing really came from it as far as like jobs.
How were you finding brand deals and paying the bills as a creator especially? What worked for you?
I did this in my directing days with like spec commercials.
This is Creator, the podcast from Matador Network. I'm your host, Ross Borden, and I believe creators are the future of all global advertising. So join me as I sit down with top creators to hear about how they got started, the challenges they've overcome, and the tips you need to become a full-time creator. All right, we're back with another episode of Creator, the podcast today. Very special guest, Cole Walliser, the man, the myth, the legend. Cole, thank you for coming. And please, for those not familiar with your work and your channels, please introduce yourself.
Ross, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Yeah, as stated, my name is Cole Walliser. I'm by trade a director. This is like my traditional role, but it's evolved sort of into a talent host, content creator, actor. It's grown quite a bit in the past couple years, but the core of my being, I believe, is I would label myself a director.
Give me a quick highlight reel of where you grew up, where you're from, and then how you became a creator and a director. Would love a little bit of background for those who are not familiar.
Yeah, let's get right into it. I'm Canadian. I'm from Vancouver, Canada. That is where I grew up and spent my formative years. I started creating stuff on like High 8, maybe, Mini DV, like way back in the day before there was any way to distribute content or share stuff. I just loved I learned early I loved making things, and video stuff was just a really cool, fun thing to do. And I started playing around with it. And
when you were a kid, like how old were you when you started making stuff with that? Like,
on my own, probably 15. But I do remember like playing with family video camera kind of a thing. But when I was 15, I used to go up to my friend's cabin up the coast of British Columbia, and we would just be like all like 10 boys, just like going cliff jumping, playing golf, going like wake surfing, like doing all this fun stuff. And my friend's mom would have a video camera and she'd film everything. And I would take that footage in like 2 VCRs back in the day, edit a thing together. And so I did this every summer. We would go do it. I have a multitude of these sort of like recap videos, and that's kind of like that was the first time I took my own initiative to like really make something, and it really just never stopped.
Wow, I love it. And then what brought you to the US? Was that work, or did you decide to come live here anyway? Because you're based in LA now, right?
I'm based in LA. Yeah, it was work. So this was I was 15. So I made stuff all sort of through high school. When I went to college, I bought a good video camera. I bought a computer to start really trying to learn how to do it and do these tiny jobs. As I was going through school, I realized I would want to at least try to do this as a career. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, I have a degree in psychology, but I was just making videos and doing tiny things for different clients along the way. And I decided that, okay, I want to give it a shot. And at the time, it was just like, you had to go to LA. This is sort of this is right as social as like YouTube was kind of coming online. But it wasn't really like that was a path at the time. So it was like, you got to go to LA. So I moved to LA.
So you never went to film school. You didn't do any of your schooling was not about being a creator or director or filmmaker. It was all sort of on the passion project side of things.
Yeah, I thought about it, like, because as I was learning how to like do filmmaking, I was like, okay, I was in college and I was like, oh, maybe I can like transfer to UCLA or USC or something and go to film school down there, or even film school in Vancouver. Like Vancouver has a decent film school. But I was very much enamored with this like DIY, like Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino thing, like just go make movies like and learn. And so with the advent of even mini DB cameras back then, I was like, I'm just going to go make stuff. I enjoy the process. I'd rather just go make things than to sit in another classroom. So that was my approach.
So you get to LA, assume you don't have too many connections here in California. What were the steps between getting here and being a complete novice, messing around on your own and doing creative things on the side, and like actually making this a career?
Yeah, I mean, I did have some connections. So aside from me exploring filmmaking, I also used to dance. So I used to do like hip hop choreography and like b-boying, and I knew a bunch of dancers from LA. So dancers from LA would like come up to Vancouver, like teach classes, workshops. I would go, I would meet them. We would I had friends out here that were in the industry through the dance community. And so it wasn't like they were in any position to hand me jobs, but I knew people that were working out here. So that really, I think, helped. You could just understand like where stuff is and like how to kind of operate, or like, some of my friends had agents and I could meet other people through them. So that I think was really helpful. And though I guess they did kind of give me work because I ended up like editing choreography reels, dance reels. So like, I would do like a dance reel for like $250. Like back in the day, it would take me like 2 weeks to edit it. You know what I mean? But it was like whatever jobs you can get was definitely what I was trying to do. And so through that, it literally was just like one little job each job's a little bit better than the last one, and you just keep on just on the grind back in the day,
And then what about big breaks? Like when did you get into, like, a lot of the audience probably knows you from the GlamBOT and the fact that you're on every red carpet now, or that you're, a commercial director doing music videos and films and all kinds of stuff. So when did you get from, like, tell me about the big breaks in your early career that kind of like set everything else up?
Yeah, I mean, there was one tangible big break and then one sort of like fake out big break. So I'm like shooting stuff for dancers, and I have friends that are choreographing for different artists. And back in the day, my friends were choreographing for Miley Cyrus, and we wanted to do these like online dance videos. This is like a little series we did with like the crew of Step Up 2 and like John Chu and all of his dancers, and then Miley Cyrus and like her community of dancers. We did these online dance battle videos on YouTube like in 2008. And so they asked me to direct Miley Cyrus's side of the videos, which obviously I'm like, yes, of course, this is super cool. So we get a bunch of dancers, we do a bunch of dance videos. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is my big break. I'm like working like Miley, Hannah Montana era is like the biggest thing in entertainment. Right?
Massive. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I'm directing these videos and they're going on YouTube and they're going viral. Other big celebrities are reporting on them. Like Madonna made a reply video on YouTube, and like Entertainment Tonight are like talking about these things. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Like we made it in a sense. You know what I mean? Like I directed a video for like a huge artist. We had a bunch of other cool guests in these videos. I was like, oh, this is my big break. Lo and behold, nothing really came from it as far as like jobs, Which, but it did do a lot of things for my career in so far as like, because it was a topic of a conversation at the time, I now sort of like it added to my confidence. I could walk into a room, because in LA it's like you go somewhere and you're like, oh, I'm a director, I do this. And like, oh, like, have you done anything I might have
anything
seen?
Anything I know?
Yeah. And so early in my career, the answer is just like no. But then that gave me something to talk about, where I'm like, oh, I did this thing. And at the time, I'm like, oh yeah, I saw that, I heard about it or whatever. So that sort of like added to the confidence, which was super helpful. But it's not like I started getting calls to go direct other things. It was a cool thing on the resume, but that was kind of it. The thing that I actually attribute to my actual big break was working for Pink. So my good friend Allison Falk, who has gone on to have a huge career as a choreographer, her first big job, or one of her first big jobs, was choreographing a tour for Pink. She wanted just some footage of her working with Pink. And so she asked me to come to rehearsal for free to just shoot some stuff. And I'm like, of course, so this is one of my best friends, still is. And so I'm like, okay, cool, I'll show up. So I show up, I meet Pink, I meet the tour director, I meet the other dancers. We film some BTS just for her. But in me meeting everybody, her and her choreography partner threw out the idea like, oh, we should bring Cole on for a couple days, like film some stuff. And then, I had a good
Pink and her partner had the idea, or your friend and her.
No, sorry, my friend Allison with her choreography partner at the time, Leah, were in like a meeting with Pink, with the tour director, this other guy Baz, and they threw out the idea of like, oh, like we should bring Cole on to like film a couple days. And then Pink and the tour director were like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. We should get some more footage. So they brought me on to like film 5 days was like the official like first job, and it turned into like 8 or 9 years of work of like on and off tour, directing a ton of music videos, opening videos for a tour, 2 documentaries of her life on the road. Like it just turned into this huge thing. And from that, like working with Pink, that did segue into a lot of other work. And it all sort of started from me being like, oh, I'll come shoot you for free. Now, I don't advise doing that. There's a huge problem with working for free. But there is certain instances where if you personally feel there's value, then I think you should entertain the idea of doing it. If someone's telling you that there's value and you should work for free, tell them to get the heck out of there and never call you again. But if there's a situation where you feel like there's value in doing something and you can afford the time to go do it, there often is a reason to do it on occasion. Not all the time, not every time, but sometimes, you know?
So those are the 2 big breaks. And then how do you, when someone says, hey, Cole, what do you do? You know, what space are you in? You do something in entertainment. How do you explain? Are you director first and foremost? Like, tell us about, you said you're at your office in LA right now. What is the current status of, you know, your business and, you know, what do you call yourself?
Yeah, it's changed recently because of the amount of time and even sort of the exposure I have on social these past couple of years. 5 years ago, it would be director. Like, that's it. I wouldn't say anything else. But now, because I'm like, I mean, my career has expanded in a variety of ways because of social. I usually say I'm a director, then I go, but sometimes I'm on camera too. So I'm either hosting, doing some acting, just doing some on camera things. So I basically kind of say I'm behind the camera and occasionally in front. But like the hosting thing has grown quite a bit, where like I hosted a TV show on Hulu called Exposure. I've done a ton of other like hosting gigs. I was just in Saudi Arabia hosting a red carpet show for a designer named Ellie Saab. So the on-camera stuff is growing, and for me, it's a really fun and exciting new thing. It's like a whole new avenue of my career. And not that like directing is boring in any way. This is still like the most fulfilling creative pursuit. But just being on camera is like a fun new aspect that is really exciting for me, and I'm really enjoying doing it a lot right now.
Yeah, with the 2 big projects we've done with you at Matador, that were really more in front of the camera than anything. You were 100%. The host of our Visit California series and then the Samsung series. So you touched on that. Let's talk about that, because like I remember we did that Samsung showcase program with you and a couple other creators. And then I remember the head of the agency called me and they said, hey, what is Matador's relationship with Cole? The client's interested in bringing him on to do something much bigger in this Hulu show where he'd be the host. Like, is it cool? And I was like, hell yeah, you should absolutely reach out to him. And then that became Exposure. So tell us a little bit about that whole adventure with Samsung and what you guys did with Exposure.
Yeah, this was a super cool experience. And it's a bummer that we only did 1 season, because for me, this was one of the most rewarding projects I've done, simply because, as I mentioned, right, like before content was a thing, I was making content. I was editing videos. I was trying to like create stuff. And this is really an art that I've spent my entire life just being obsessed about and working in and creating. And so to have a show that's like celebrating this art form, the show itself was predominantly about photography. And it was using Samsung phones in a reality competition show. So we had 8 competitors from a variety of backgrounds, like semi-professional photographers to like hobbyists to like moms who take cool pictures of their kids, like really, really cool variety of group. And we would task them with different challenges each week to go do a cool portrait or an action shot or whatever. And so, yeah, just celebrating like the photography art form and hosting that show, being a judge of the contestants was just such a rewarding experience. And yeah, it was really, really cool. I'm really proud of like the work that we all did. And it sort of stemmed from our initial Samsung thing together. So it all worked out.
Yeah, it was cool. I saw a few episodes. I really liked it. So shifting gears a little bit, as I said in the beginning, I feel like most people know you and what do you have, like 15 million followers now on social across the board?
Across platform, I think I'm closer to 20, but yeah.
My man, crushing it. So I feel like a lot of people see you in those videos that are, the GlamBOT videos. So walk us through a little bit, even for those who already know exactly what I'm talking about, walk us through a little bit of like how that came to be. I think it was with E originally, or maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, but like, was that your idea? How did that whole thing happen? Because now you basically have met probably more celebrities than anyone on earth, and you're on every red carpet. So walk us through that whole experience.
Yeah, it's pretty wild because I think that this coming year will be my 10th year doing it. I think it depends if I count. We missed one during the pandemic, but that's neither here nor there. But so it is, the GlamBOT is an E thing. So E has, the best red carpet show for all the award shows. And they have a variety of interview booths. And in 2016, we started this thing called the GlamBOT. This wasn't my invention. This was a thing that repurposed a camera system to shoot talent. So the camera system is typically used in like tabletop commercials, which is often like food commercials. So when you see like a taco break in half and it's like all in slow motion, the food goes like flying, or like a Coke is pouring and the camera's like whipping around. This is the camera system that shoots those things. It's a motion control arm with a high-speed camera, and that's typically what it's used for. I don't know where the idea came from. My assumption is that this was an executive at E combined with like a couple other vendors to shoot talent with it. They did a camera test. They're like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then they're like, we need a director to direct talent on the red carpet. And they wanted someone that had done movement. And so me, with my history in dance, I'd shot a lot of dance. They wanted someone that had shot beauty. And the segue from Pink was I started doing stuff with CoverGirl, and then I directed stuff for like Pantene, Revlon, all these beauty brands for a variety of years. So I had a ton of experience shooting like pop stars, like female pop stars and beauty. And they wanted someone that was comfortable around sort of A-listers. And through my work with Pink, I ended up working with Katy Perry, Cher, Britney, and again, a ton of pop stars. So I sort of had this roster of people that I had directed prior to even starting the GlamBOT. And this initially was a job as a director. I would show up for the weekends. I would direct talent. I'd create all these cool slow-mo videos with the talent, and then I would go home. It wasn't until 2018, I had the idea, like 2018, 2019, I started doing some versions of BTS, but in 2020, that's when everything was like really dialed in, and there was actually like a good amount of content that I was like actively pushing out in 2020 based on the GlamBOT. And that's when my socials like took off. And this was like right at the start of the pandemic. And then everybody's getting on TikTok. And it was just like this like storm of everybody consuming content. And my content was brand new. And I had a ton of it. So this was a perfect storm.
How do you negotiate that with E? Did you just are you saying I directed this in your contract so I can use this content?
Oh no, in the contract they own all the footage for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you can use it. You can still use it on
Well, so at the time it was like I think we need to remember the climate of social and like a little before 2020, right? Like brands were not jumping on social 2017, 2018, 2019. Even celebrities were not really like full in on social back then, right? Some were like playing around with it, and some brands were like, okay, like maybe we should have a bit of a presence. But I still think the industry was kind of like social, you know what I mean? It wasn't the real thing. It wasn't TV movies. It wasn't like these $1 million commercials. It was this secondary thing, right? And so and like at the time, you could take, I could take a photo on the red carpet and post on my social, right? Like that's fine. And so I just kind of it was one of these things where like don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. But it wasn't even like I was that conscious of it. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I know they're gonna have a problem with this. It was really just like this stuff is cool, and I'm like promoting E. You know what I mean?
Totally.
This is
big
cool
for them
stuff.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, like I just started making them. I was just putting in the work. I was editing them. Like I would just sit down. Again during the pandemic, it was like not much going on. So it was like Friday night. I was like, I guess I'm gonna edit a GlamBOT. I'd sit down, cut for 2 or 3 hours, and like post it the next day or something. And then I would tag them, and it was just getting traction. And basically, like obviously we've had conversations through the years, and now we have a more formal process for like how these get made and approvals and things. Because technically, like, in the contract, like all the footage shot in that booth, E owns. So despite the fact that I brought my own cameras, it's like occurring on their set. So like they own the footage, which is like fine. Like they're paying for everything to be there.
Yeah,
totally fine. But we've just sort of reached this understanding where like, you know, I'm making this content and it's good for the brand. It's good for them. It's good for me. It's like, you know, it's fun, good content. It's good for everybody. So now we just have an agreement for like how this all functions. But back in the day, I was just like, this is cool. I'm going to shoot it. I'm going to post it. And I didn't really think twice about it because it was like still promoting E and the event and the footage, right? So and it is really all good. But yeah, we definitely needed to have some conversations along the way for like how this operated, you know?
Right. It's at some point the lawyers are like, hang on, we should have some sort of agreement in writing.
Oh, I had conversations with lawyers, yeah, for sure. But I mean, it's all good. We worked it all out, right?
Who is your favorite GlamBOT celebrity in interaction or encounter? Like who is the best?
Yeah, this is a good question. I was trying to like add up. Like I think I do over 100. I do 500 a year, I think, because we typically do 5 events. We do Emmys, Grammys, Oscars, Golden Globes, and then sometimes like SAG Awards or People's Choice Awards. There's a couple that vary in there, but we kind of do 5 events. And I've done over 100 at each event every time. Like maybe early years we would do like 80, but I think like at the Grammys this past year we did like 160 or something like that. Just like an insane amount, right? So I've done 500 a year for the past not fully 10 years, maybe like 8 or 9 years. There's thousands of GlamBOTs I've done over the years, right? But clearly there's a few that stick out in my mind. I think the answer that I typically give, the answer is, I think, Brad Pitt at the 2020 Oscars. And the reason why it's Brad Pitt is because like I've shot a ton of cool celebrities and talent, but Brad Pitt was a person that I like grew up watching his movies, right? So like as a kid, watching him in all sorts of stuff, for me to like, you know, to meet him. And also he was super cool. He was like super nice, super personable. And then the GlamBOT was super awesome. I was like, all these like factors, like, oh, this is probably one of the best interactions. But I also think like Ariana Grande, both in 2020 and this past year in 2024 was really sweet. Billie Eilish was really sweet. So there's a bunch that stand out, but I think Brad Pitt tops it.
That's awesome. So as things have, you know, now you're a content creator, you're talent, you're a director, you have massive socials. Tell us about what sort of pays the bills now. Where's your career going? Are you doing more directing? Are you doing more brand partnerships and stuff that's social first content? Like what is the most lucrative? Because, you know, this podcast is about people learning about becoming a creator. And a big part of that is like going, you know, full on and quitting your day job so you can do this and pay the bills. What are the things that are really moving the needle for you as a business right now?
Yeah, as a business, I'm still doing traditional directing things, but what I've realized through this whole experience of like developing a following online is that when I do a brand partnership or when I do something on social, I'm sort of doing 3 jobs in one, right? So it's like if I'm doing a thing for CoverGirl, or even like the Super Bowl commercial I directed this year for CBS, I'm getting hired to direct a thing, and that's the one job I have, right? Which is a big job, which is an awesome job, which is creatively fulfilling a lot of the time. And you're working with the ad agency, the client, whatever. You do your prep, you show up, you direct, and then you go home. That's one job. If I do a brand partnership, you know, I've done a ton of these over the years, but I'll just say whatever brand it is. They're hiring me to direct the thing, typically, say for when I work with you guys, which is actually quite lovely because like it's fun to alleviate the mental brain capacity it takes to create something and just be talent. Yeah. But that's a different story. But typically, I'm being hired to direct the thing that we're making to post. I'm getting paid for that. So that's my directing fee in the same sense that like when I direct a commercial, I get a directing fee. But I'm also getting paid a talent fee. Right? Because typically on a brand deal on social, I'm the talent in this brand deal. So I'm directing it and I'm sort of starring in it. That's another fee because as I just mentioned, I could do a brand deal where I'm not directing, right? So someone else is going to come in and produce and direct it and then I'll just be talent. But typically I'm directing it and I'm talent. So that's 2 jobs. And then I also get paid for distribution. I get paid to post this on my social. So I get paid to give access to this brand to my entire audience. So I get paid a 3rd time. So I'm in every brand deal, typically, I essentially have like 3 pretty good jobs, because you can sustain yourself just if you were just talent. You could sustain yourself if you're just a director, or you could sustain yourself if you just had like an audience that you were sort of selling.
Right.
So in that regard,
triple threat.
The bills are paid easier through brand deals, because each job is really 3 jobs, right? So if I do 5 brand deal jobs, that's almost the equivalent of 15 directing jobs, right? And so it just becomes easier to kind of make a living. I'm just adding more value in these types of jobs because I'm selling things 3 times, right? So that is as my socials have grown, that capacity has grown as well. And in a good way, this is helping me sort of reposition my directing, because I've been a short form director for my entire career, music videos, commercials, promo stuff. But the dream has always been to move into narrative, right? And so now that I have this business that is supporting me and my endeavors through content, I'm able to spend time, time is the limiting factor in everything that I do now. But I'm able to spend some time developing narrative projects. So different short films, different features, working on scripts. This has been a thing that I've wanted to do, but now this current structure sort of empowers me to do that with a little bit more effectiveness, or with a little like less struggle, because I am able to make a living doing content. I can spend time and energy working on development now.
Tell us about that. Tell us about the development stuff and the writing and the narrative stuff that you're working on.
Yeah, I've in all of my short form stuff, I've always had this sort of interest, and I guess sort of like narrative storytelling is always a thing that is sort of weaved through what I do. Even if it's doing, like a documentary on Pink on her life on the road, or even in some of the music videos I did for her, they always sort of have these narrative storylines, because this is the thing that's enamored me about film since the beginning. But now I'm just at the place where it's like, okay, it's really like, it's kind of interesting, because I do think that on some level, my career as a director has had some success, right? Like I've directed stuff for some of these big stars, and I've done some really cool projects. But in the grand scheme of like how Hollywood works, that doesn't necessarily mean that I can direct a feature. I know I can direct a feature. I think a lot of like sort of maybe audience members would be like, yeah, of course this guy can direct a feature. But the people actually paying for the money for a feature to be made, it doesn't guarantee that, which I do understand, right? And directing feature films, you end up in this bit of a catch-22 where like nobody knows you can direct a feature film until you've directed a feature film, right? And they don't want to take any risks, because if they're putting up 100,000, or 100 million, it's like it's a risk if someone hasn't sort of necessarily been vetted. So it's always sort of tricky to kind of break in. And while I do feel like I'm in a good position based on the fact that I've worked in the industry for a long time and I do know a lot of people, this is still a new avenue that one must break into. And it's somewhat not, I mean, I guess it's somewhat surprising of how sort of unrelated those two things are. Short form directing and long form directing, these are it's almost like they're separate industries in a sense. So my approach, I could wait around until someone has a script that they feel like I'm the right director for, or I can spend my time and energy trying to develop something that is interesting, fascinating, a story that I want to tell, and it be good enough for someone to give me some money for. That's kind of the thing where I'm much more in control of that destiny. And so I'm spending time and energy on that pursuit.
So tell us a little bit more about that process. So you're basically using smaller films and projects as a stepping stone to establish a formal career and experience as a narrative director. Are you finding stories that you think are interesting or people you think are interesting and then doing the whole thing and sort of going to raise money for that film? Or what is that process like to get a sort of indie film funded if you're the director?
Yeah, there's no one way. And in all of my years sort of pursuing interest in this field, I've done so much research on like how these early movies get made, and there's almost nothing in common between all of them. It's like everybody, you just like bootstrap it, like figure it out. Friends and family, you know some one rich person, you beg money, you get a script to some actor. You know what I mean? There's a million different ways, and there's very few consistent themes other than you're just like busting your ass until it happens. So for me, like I've done a bunch of short films early in my career, but then I started working, and I've just been sort of like, you know, thankfully been able to work. But it's more about me developing stories that I find interesting and that I want to tell. I think that's sort of like the guiding parameter for my pursuit now. And it's less like I could find news articles and things, and I have that I found interesting and sort of worked on developing things, but it opens a bit of a can of worms with regards to licensing and like story rights and like all these things. I'm almost better suited to like come up with something in my head or something that I've realized or thought of or seen or whatever that's not like directly related to a true thing, and create and craft the story that I want to tell. And so there's almost two avenues in which I'm pursuing this in. There's a couple of different features I've been working on, but also I've been sort of working on shorts. It's been I think that me directing a short now is another interesting way to do this and do the festival circuits, because me as a director obviously has changed since, I mean, I literally was like at the start of my career when I was doing shorts, and my experience has obviously changed since then. So I think doing a short now would be an interesting approach and one that I do think I want to do in the near future.
So if you develop a short that you're like obsessed with, you really have a lot of confidence in, tell us about a little about the importance of the festival circuits. You're entering it into film festivals, presumably not just to reach people and audiences that are physically there, but for the prestige or the recognition that comes with those, or are you trying to win awards, or what's the goal there?
Yeah, I mean, the goal really would be to get the right people to see and talk about it, right? Because obviously you can do a short and throw that up online and have, you know, anywhere from 10 people to 10,000 to 100,000 people watch this thing. But for me, the goal would be to get studio executives to see my work and to be curious about me as a filmmaker, to then either have me pitch ideas or, you know, basically open the door in the traditional sense, right? So the film festival circuit is a way to, like, obviously feature film execs are tapped into what's happening on the film circuit, and that is the audience that I want to target or showcase my work to, rather than the general audience, right? Like I do think that there is, you know, there are cases where someone does a short film, they put it online, and this blows up and they get a film deal. Like this does happen. But maybe I don't have that much self-confidence in my ability to short film to hack. I don't know how to do a viral short film. You know what I mean? Like I know how to do viral content, but a viral short film is a thing that like I've never really tried to do. So that is a bit scary and daunting. But I do feel like I can craft a story that is enamoring and captivating, and at least get some interest based on the festival circuit. So it's not even like to win awards. Winning awards is of course nice, and the recognition is always great. But it really would be to get my work the work that I want to do in front of the right people. That would be kind of the goal of doing the short film circuit. Yeah.
So shifting gears back to being a content creator and talent, I forget if you had a manager when I first met you, or I know you're with, I think you're with CAA right now in terms of an agency, but like, what is your advice to creators as they're getting bigger? Let's think social media creators versus like directors or just pure talent. How important is it to have a manager? How important is it to have, be part of an agency where you have a team representing you? And what kind of value does that bring? And what are the sort of pros and cons early on?
That's a really good question, and one that I don't know if I know the answer to. I obviously can speak to my own experience, but I do think my trajectory into representation is a little bit different than a traditional creator, because I know that there's agencies and managers that work just with creators, right? But for me, because my big goal is narrative storytelling in the traditional sense in Hollywood, I always wanted to sign with like a traditional agency and traditional management, right? So as you mentioned, I'm with CAA, sort of across the board for directing for talent and all things. And then my management company is Entertainment 360, which represent a ton of traditional people. And they both have amazing digital departments. But I know there's companies like Whaler and these other companies that rep just creators. And I don't know if I can advise like someone who has success on social and is looking for reps, whether that is the right move. Because I've never worked with them in that, or not just Whaler, but like, other social media first companies.
Yeah.
I know they do a lot of cool work, but I don't know if I can advise it of whether that's a good idea or not. I will say that for me, wanting to be in the traditional space and having always wanted to be with a big agency and a big management company, and having spent many years unsigned with these companies, thinking I should be signed with one of these big companies, I did make a decision that I was never going to knock down representation's door. I was never going to submit myself to CAA. I was never going to submit myself to like big management companies. My approach, and I think this can be applied to sort of anybody seeking representation, my approach was like, I'm going to work on my career. I'm going to build my career to be the best that I can as possible. And when I'm in the position where I add value to these companies, they will come to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or at least they will express interest, or like it'll happen organically. Because I know if I knock on the door of like, a big agency and I submit my stuff, they might be like, yeah, he's doing cool stuff. We could probably work him, but they're not going to be like driven to really help me in my career. But if I just sort of if I sort of grow my career as big as I can till they notice, then this dynamic is a thing that's going to work. And for, whether I really love both of my representation, both on the agency and the management side. Maybe we just sort of like all click, or maybe this is a result of like waiting until that time. Like I did the TV show on Hulu. I was not repped at CAA when I did that. And I had like a friend of a friend like work the deal. But it was from that job that like got me representation. Right. So, and it's been great since then. So, that was my trajectory, but I do think that like people can help along the way. And if something organically happens, if a management or agency expresses interest in you and your work, I do think that it is good to explore that, because I think that people on your side helping you in your career is good. You just have to find the right person, because there's a bunch of people that say that they can help and then don't help. They're everywhere.
Yeah, I've seen quite a bit of that with especially people who represent digital creators, where they, we're like, we have 15K for this project, and they're like, how about 25K? And we're like, we lose interest. And I think the creator maybe never even knows that there is a great offer for a fun project to go on a trip for 15 grand. And the hotshot agent has just ruined a revenue opportunity for the creator. So I think that's good advice about finding someone who actually has the chops and is experienced and also knows where you are in your career.
Yeah. And I think there's one misconception about reps too. Like, okay, because again, I signed with CAA in 2021, right? Like I started working as a director in 2009, right? So I've had versions of reps. Like in the commercial world, you basically sign with like a production company, and it's like they pitch you to like get work. And I've been with a variety of like music video reps and like commercial reps, production company reps. And still, like, bottom line, like, I think there's this misconception that like, okay, you get an agent and like they're going to get you all your work. This is not at all what happens, right? Like it's really still up to you to like procure all of your own work and to like build your own career. And I learned those lessons along the way, like signing with a variety of people thinking they're going to bring me work, and then they don't. And then I'm like, what the heck? And it still really just like relies on me. So it's like, I just think that you're better suited to just figure out the best way to move forward and like build your own career. And when people pop in and they can help, and then great. And if you start a relationship and it's still beneficial, like keep it going. And if you start a relationship and it's not, then like you can stop it, right? So it just still ends up being your responsibility, and there are people that can help, and nobody's going to do the work for you, you know?
Totally. And I think like when you obviously now I would say most of your work I would imagine is finding you or finding your representation and then they're saying, "Hey Cole, what do you think about this?" But in the earlier days before that was the case, how were you finding brand deals and paying the bills as a creator, especially? Not much as like on the directing side, but would you, I've talked to different people. People are like, some people find a brand they love and they go hit up LinkedIn, a bunch of people on LinkedIn and try and get something going there. Some people use the product that they love on their channel and hope they get noticed by the brand. What worked for you in that arena?
Like this is, I did this in my directing days with like spec commercials. So I directed a bunch of spec commercials. We did stuff. I did like a Coke spec commercial, did a bunch of other like some car stuff like back in the day. Just cause that's like how you did it as a director. You just do a spec and like submit it to somebody. I think that worked with Mercedes. I had a Mercedes and I was a fan of the brand and we shot some cool stuff. This is like early social and I posted it on social and I got a hold of like the Mercedes social people and I started a relationship and I ended up working with Mercedes for like 4 years based off some spec work.
Can you explain to the audience what that means and why it's important?
Yeah. Spec work is on speculation. So it's basically me doing a job that doesn't exist, right? So I did a Coke commercial. As I mentioned, like, friends with a bunch of dancers. We basically did like a dance Coke commercial. And it's basically taking any product or anything and essentially, typically when you say spec, it means commercial, but I guess it could sort of mean kind of anything. But we did like a 30-second commercial with my friend who was a dancer on a super hot day, and basically just made a commercial on spec. So nobody's paying us. We had the idea. We went, we shot it, we produced it. And then we like tried to get Coke to see it, but still like those specs.
And
you
were successful. They actually saw it and like gave you a call.
No, Coke didn't see it. I don't think Coke saw that one. But what I was going to say is like, it still is a piece of work that you've done that you can use for any other brands. Like I can take that and be like, hey, I did this thing on spec. And it like they understand that it's not a job, but you're sort of still evaluating like the work and how good it is. So I can use it to show any brand like, hey, I can do this cool work, even though it wasn't sort of like a commission job. It still
shows what you're capable of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in a concise way, so. I
was also going to ask about that on your site, which is awesome. You have a reel, and I feel like reels are still important, and you put all your best work into your reel, and it's sort of like the overall in 1 or 2 minutes, your portfolio of what you're capable of. How do you go about making a reel, and is it important? Is that right, or do you not really need a reel?
I still think reels are important. It depends on what kind of jobs you're going for, but I do think they're really helpful because you can get an overview of someone's work and aesthetic in a minute or two. Whereas like, yes, we do have our social profiles and I can scroll and like find stuff, but like, I don't know if the random things I'm clicking on are going to be like your best work or your worst work or what I'm really getting. So I do think a reel is like a great way to bring someone up to speed with the work that you've done. And so it is a bit of work to edit these things and to keep track of all your stuff. But I do think that like, I am confident that I can send someone my reel and then click on it and be like, oh, I have an idea of what Cole does, right? Rather than just being like, hey, look at my social. Like you might see me golfing or driving my car. It's just like, it's not like, it's not really my work, right?
Right.
So I do think it really is helpful. And even lately I started doing like behind camera and on camera in a single reel, right? So it's like there's a section where it's like me on camera doing stuff and there's a section for me as a director. So again, the goal is to like give someone a full scope of the breadth of my work and capabilities, which now includes me on camera. So that is now I have 2 reels. I have just a directing one and then I have sort of an on camera / directing one.
I assume now you have a full team around you who helps you with a lot of the heavy lifting, post-production for all these different channels. Do you have a team? And at what point were you like, damn, I need some help and I can afford to help. And if I get a small team around me, I could just do more.
Is a team one person? Cause I have one person.
Sure.
So me and another person is a team, I guess. Yeah.
That's really impressive. They must be very productive.
Yeah, it's very stressful at times actually. No, but like I'm at the point that I do want to figure out an effective way to scale. But basically, I have one full-time assistant, and she knows how to shoot and edit, and she helps me with like organization stuff. And we delegate different things. But she's super helpful in like all of the pursuits because she's kind of like a jack of all trades kind of a thing, which has been really good. But we do hit sort of bottlenecks and sort of like bandwidth limits, especially because I have a new business endeavor that I'm pursuing. And this is going to require not only more content, but more logistics, more just operational things. And so I do need to sort of scale in some sense. And I don't know how to do that per se. So I'm figuring that out. And also like what that means. Is this like more staff? Is it more like part-time vendors? Like I don't really know. And this is all the thing I'm currently trying to figure out. But
what's the new business? Do we get a sneak peek at the new business venture?
Yeah, the new business venture is a coffee company. So I started a coffee company during the pandemic. I've just been obsessed with coffee for a long time. And I started sourcing a roast, and we made like mugs, and we've done a bunch of other cool, fun things. Like during the month of May, which is AAPI Heritage Month, we released Asian-based coffee roasted by an Asian roaster, and all the proceeds went to sort of help AAPI sort of communities.
Awesome. Love that.
I will say, I will give you the little spiel that actually probably very aligned with the audience here. Is the whole idea of this new coffee company is to pursue, it's for people that wake up and have their coffee to pursue their creative dreams, right? So the tagline is fuel your creativity. And basically it's for anybody that like gets up, has a cup of coffee, and like does their creative thing. And I want to curate a community of people that are pursuing creative endeavors to just sort of like gather around, coffee and creativity essentially. And so we have a bunch of like marketing initiatives. I want to do a bunch of like event things. There's a lot of things that I'm trying to do with this. It isn't just really about coffee. Coffee is sort of like the binding thing amongst everybody. But it also is an avenue for myself as a creator where I'm going to do a little bit of merch. I'm going to do some other sort of products, some like clothing stuff, some other like home stuff. It just is like an avenue for me to express all of my creative ideas and get a bunch of other creatives on board as well. So that's kind of the approach, and I am super excited about all the things to come.
Love that, man. That's really exciting. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
And will there be? Is it just DTC? Like to get the coffee? Are you going to have shops in LA or like any retail storefronts, or just direct to consumer?
Just
coffee?
To start, it'll be direct to consumer. I think in the previous coffee version, we were in a couple retail spaces here, just based on personal relationships that I have. So I think we're going to be DTC, but like I want to get it into like little farmers markets, little like markets and things around LA, specifically like West Side, like Santa Monica, Venice, like where I'm based. Yeah. And we want to do like pop-ups, we want to do events, we want to do a bunch of cool, fun things. So all of that is to come.
Awesome, man.
I just need someone to run it. So anybody out there wants to loves coffee and is creative, then
what people should hear is Cole's hiring more interns, assistants, editors, and now he needs to staff his entire coffee brand with exactly people. So. All right. So since we are, as you know, Matador is a travel brand. 2 quick questions for you to end the interview. One, have you ever done anything abroad, a project that you've done while traveling, or you got to travel for a project that was really special?
I have done a variety of work while traveling. As mentioned, like early, like on tour with Pink. This was like my first time going overseas, my first time doing a lot of travel with her and the team there. So that, I have obviously great fond memories of that and really, really cool. But, we would go to a place and it's like, we're in the venue the whole time. So you don't get to see, you have days off, right? But it's not like when we did the Visit California thing where we're really like doing these activities in different locations, right? But another one that stands out was actually a thing with Mercedes, which was in 2022. We shot a commercial in Portugal, and I was in Portugal for like 5 days, like South Portugal, like on the beach, shooting the launch for one of their new cars. And this was really, really cool because again, I was just talent on this one, but stayed like beachside kind of hotel The other talent was Madeline Petch. So she was like working all the time, and I would just like come in and out and like do stuff here and there. So I was like chilling a bit. I got to see Portugal. It was my first time there. It's just beautiful weather, really cool production. So that one stands out. But then even just like I just got home maybe 2 weeks ago from almost like a global jaunt where I was in Saudi Arabia hosting a red carpet for Elie Saab, as I mentioned. And then I was in Bangkok working on some writing. This is like my personal time. And then I went to Australia, to Sydney, and I directed a bunch of slow-mo videos for the TikTok awards out there. So it was quite an epic trip. I was gone for 3 weeks. It was exhausting, but fun. And so that's the most recent thing. I literally got back 10 days ago. So
all right, so perfect time to ask you my question I ask everyone, which is, if your passport only worked in 3 countries of the world and you had to limit your entire life to those 3 countries, what would those 3 countries be?
Wait, so 3 additional countries to the home country?
No, not additional, including the U.S. If that's one of your countries, that's one of your countries. Then you got 2 more left.
Oh, well, then I only get to pick one because I'm Canadian. I have to go to Canada, right? Okay. So it's like it has to be U.S. and Canada, which is like a bummer because
now it's down to just one.
Yeah, man, where would I go? One country I could travel to. I think Italy.
Italy, yeah.
I love it out there, and I think it's there's a variety of things. You can get sunny beach stuff, you can get cold mountain stuff. Because I'm kind of thinking like, okay, like I do love Thailand, like Indonesia. Could I go to Bali forever? I think that would end up getting like, you would be tired, but I think that for the amount, like there's so many, I love Italy, and there's such a different variety of places and things and environments. Yeah. I mean, I could travel up and down Italy forever, so I'm going to say Italy.
Yeah, that's a good answer. All right, Canada, U.S., and Italy. That's official. Cole, thanks so much for your time. I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you coming on.
Dude, thank you, Ross. It was a pleasure chatting. I love just talking about, just the creative pursuit on things, as I'm basing my entire coffee company on it, right? So this has been a lovely conversation, and thank you for having me.
Creator, the podcast, is produced by Matador Network. We are a leading global travel publisher focused on travel and adventure. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe. Every week, I interview a new top creator. New episodes are released every Tuesday on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere podcasts are found. Thanks for listening.